So, Stacy, you want to start?
So, good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's Sunday night lecture series. And tonight we have 5 students from Dharma Buddhist University. They are the graduates of this year who will be sharing some of their reflections and their experience studying at DRBU. We will have 3 graduates from the MA program, and they just finished a master's degree in Buddhist classics, followed by 2 students from the translation certificate program. And these students were in the Buddhist text translation graduate certificate program. So first, I would like to invite Rachel to speak.
Before you start, I'd like to let people know that 你如果要听中文的话，要到那个中文室去，在你的控制的下头有个像小地球那个，可以选那个中文室，因为这个是同步的翻译。Okay, sorry, go ahead.
No worries. Yeah, as Stacy just said, my name is Rachel Croft, and I was one of the master's students who graduated this year. So over this last month since I graduated, I've had a little time to look back on my years at DRBU, and I wanted to share some of my thoughts and reflections that have been coming up. But first, I wanted to share some of my background with you all about who I am and how I came to be at DRBU, for those of you that don't know me. I was born in Southern California and raised in a conservative Christian sect. And while I found a lot to appreciate and respect in that religion, and still do, in high school, it became clear to me that there was also a lot about Christianity that just didn't work for me. And so in college, I really threw myself into scientific realism. And I ended up with a degree in neuroscience and being surrounded by a lot of people who laughed at the idea of a greater spiritual truth. But I feel like life has a funny way of getting us where we need to go. And towards the end of college, I went through a series of intensely distressing experiences. And the outcome of that was that my sense of reality and self was really broken down in this very foundational sort of way. And although this was arguably a really unwanted experience, as hard times so often do, it also had this extraordinary silver lining, this upside. And so I wouldn't trade that part of my life for anything. It ended up opening me up to a way of being that was beyond the rational mind, that was profound and beautiful and just undeniably true. And luckily, right around this time, I also had a friend who did believe in something else. And he was going to a Buddhist lecture series every week. And he invited me to come one week. And even though I'd never had an interest in Buddhism particularly, he asked with just this like palpable sincerity. And I knew I just had to say yes. And so I went and I walked into the room with this Buddhist teacher. And I just felt this incredible sense of relief. There was something about being in the energy field of a Chan practitioner and the students there that just felt like coming home. And it's been 10 or so years, I guess maybe 12 since that day. And ever since, I've felt continuously aligned with the Buddhist tradition and have been striving to grow in my ability to shape my life around it. So one very practical way that manifested in my life is that I've spent a lot of years now debating whether to pursue a graduate degree or become a nun. And so coming to DRBU with that sort of internal debate seemed like a really easy decision. I remember the day I visited CTTB for the first time. I came kind of on a whim. I was visiting family in Ukiah, and I just Googled things to do, and was excited to find out that there was a big monastery around. So I came over and was told there was a university there as well, and it just seemed too good to be true to me. I wondered, like, how could there be a college founded by practitioners based on Buddhist principles in a monastery or on the same grounds as a monastery? It sounded like a description of a Buddha land, not something in this human realm. So it was interesting, though, that in reality, it was a really difficult decision when it came down to it to actually attend DRBU. And that's for a lot of reasons. But I think the biggest, or a couple of the biggest ones, is that COVID really got in the way, as it did for so many different aspects of our lives. I really wanted to come to the program because I wanted to be a part of the larger CTTB community. And since that wasn't possible during the first year online, I was hesitant to join them at all. I wanted to postpone or maybe not even come at all, depending on how my life played out in that year. But another major place of resistance for me was that I didn't see Buddhism as something that necessarily should be studied. I wondered how was engaging the mind that creates concepts and proliferates thoughts, how was that something that was going to help us arrive at the mind that does not? And I wondered, if I really wanted to deepen my practice, wouldn't it be better for me to spend 2 years in retreat? But I was relieved to find when I actually came to DRBU and audited classes and talked to people that I wasn't alone with these questions at all. They were on the minds of the students, and of course they were on the minds of the people who created DRBU. The founders were well aware, the faculty that I talked to who are also the founders, which is so cool, were completely aware of this and had done their best to make sure that the curriculum integrated practice with the study. So I decided to come anyways, in spite of these misgivings, and I did my best to sort of put those worries aside. And it would turn out that my best wasn't really that great. I continued to struggle with this inner resistance sort of throughout the program. As I read the texts and spent a lot of time analyzing them, just felt like it wasn't, like there was this nagging feeling of I shouldn't be doing this. This isn't practice. I'll give you an example of how this showed up for me. The Platform Sutra is one of the first texts we read in the master's program, and in it the sixth patriarch says, "The true, permanent, still, extinct bliss, the mark of nirvana is thus. I have struggled to explain it, to cause you to reject your false views. Don't understand it by words alone, and maybe you'll understand a bit of this." So in my copy of the Platform Sutra, this passage is underlined, and I wrote the word yes in all caps with an exclamation mark by it. And I made sure to bring it up in class because it was just so, to me, sort of expressing my resistance to the program. I knew it was sort of this petty resistance that was ego-based and something I needed to get past, but I just couldn't quite do it. I just kept wrestling with it. And one thing, though, that finally solidified for me in the last few weeks of my time at DRBU is that there is this very important place for the study of Buddhist texts in the lives of Buddhist practitioners. While it is absolutely essential for us to realize the truths with the text, within the text for ourselves, and this is a doing, a being, and not a thinking, for many of us, using the mind to approach text, the thinking mind, is actually a very natural Dharma door. And that's precisely because we are so used to and practiced at using the thinking mind. So, sort of in other words, what I realized is that reading wisdom and looking into it deeply is practice. It's one way to practice. And each time we approach a sutra or another text based in wisdom with the intent of going beyond the mere words, we dissolve the reign of our conscious mind just a little bit more. It's a slow process, sometimes excruciatingly slow, but in time, what we do is we build a bridge between the conscious mind and the awakened mind. And this is an incredibly beneficial skill for anyone to have. And it's one that everyone who attends DRBU must inevitably expand their capacity to within themselves, if nothing else, just to the sheer repetition of reading and talking about text. So that's one small way my mind has changed as a result of my time here. It's one gift that DRBU has given me. And there really are just so many other countless gems that I've learned in ways that I've changed. But so I can't begin to talk about them all, but that was one that I wanted to share because it's so much a part of wrestling with getting a master's in Buddhist studies and Buddhist classics. Right now, I think one of the most transformative things that has come about as a result of my time at DRBU is knowing actually what I want from my life. I've realized that what I want is to practice and to serve. And in one sense, I've known that for a long time, but in another way, this feels somehow very new. There's a stability and a clarity to this aspiration now that makes it feel more real to me than ever before. And my time studying Buddhism and living with practitioners, being able to talk to the faculty and the staff and my fellow students about how they realize practice within their own lives has also helped teach me what becoming a practitioner and learning and being of service, what that will actually look like in my life. So I've sort of learned, or I've precisely learned some of the means to that end. At the moment, I don't know exactly what's next for me in my life, practically speaking. I wondered, do I want to go back to school? Do I want to start a socially responsible business? And I still wonder if I want to become a nun. I just don't know right now, but I'm very certain that I want to continue to build on what I've learned here. I want to grow in my ability to master my own mind, to turn the light of my consciousness back to look within, and hopefully someday to help relieve the suffering of others by showing them how to do the same. So I want to just end by saying that words can't express my gratitude for this gift of clarity and all the many invaluable gifts that DRBU has given me. So I want to offer you from the bottom of my heart, anyone listening who helped make my time here possible, a big thank you. And also want to thank everyone here today for listening to me share. May peace be with you guys.
Thank you, Rachel, for that very heartfelt and very thoughtful and sincere reflection. And as Rachel mentioned, the DRBU started our summer break almost 4 weeks ago. And so we haven't seen each other and we haven't seen the students for a month. And but for me to hear Rachel share just brought me back directly to the energy and of the community and of the shared inquiry. And I hope that everyone here can get a feeling of, in a way, the real thoughtfulness and seriousness that our students bring to class and their questions. And it is, in a way, it is their questions that are driving a lot of the activities and the learning, and in a way forcing me, even, as their instructors, to work harder. So thank you, Rachel, for your sharing. Next, I would like to invite Daniel. So Daniel is also a master's MA graduate. And let's see.
Hello, everyone. I'm Daniel, and I'm not as eloquent as Rachel, so I'll be reading my talk for tonight. I thought I'd share a bit of my experiences here at DRBU to help inspire those who are thinking about coming to DRBU and to give them some perspective of what life is like as a student in CTTB. So prior to coming to DRBU, I was taking graduate courses in analytical philosophy at the University of Calgary. I was focusing mostly on metaethics and metaphysics. And prior to that, I earned my bachelor's degree in religious studies. So coming to DRBU, I was a very academic and I had a very logical mind that tended to analyze everything and find flaws find flaws in logic within the text. I was accustomed to doing this because that's what philosophy trained us to do. So typically in analytical philosophy, when reading a text, we look for assumptions, premises, lemmas, and conclusions, and we try to find problems with what the author is trying to convey in their writing. So coming into DRBU with that mindset in my very first semester, I found it very difficult to adjust to the shared inquiry model. I was so used to rigorous academic studies, research, problem solving, and critical thinking. And so I had this lens that I used to compare others, and I was being judgmental of others. And in my mind, criticizing them and comparing them to what an ideal student in academia should be like. However, I later learned that this kind of self-righteous mind was just my own arrogance and inflated ego. And I think that DRBU acted like a mirror to help myself and students become aware of their mental attitude towards themselves and the world. And that's what I believe is so crucial and beneficial. I want to share some of my experiences with the various courses that really inspired or motivated me. Throughout the entire duration of my time at Dharma Rambus University, the Shurangama Sutra course was one of the most insightful and motivating. Our cohort had Dharma Master Chu and Dharma Master Jin Chuan teach the class. And every morning, Dharma Master Jin Chuan would lead us in a guided metta meditation. And we'd have Dharma Master Chu teach us, or we'd have Dharma Master Chu teach us a yogic technique used in meditation. So that was the morning part of our class. And then within the sutra, the various chapters I found contained a lot of wisdom that really touched me deeply. I don't know quite what it is, but the Yogacara philosophy contained within this text is extremely interesting and mind-bending. Also, I have to say, I've always really wanted to know more deeply about Guanyin Bodhisattva's practice of the ear organ. And I think I got a good taste of that through this course. Previously, I had a very brief and superficial understanding of Guanyin Bodhisattva's practice, but it was through the guidance of Dharma Master Chu and Dharma Master Jinchuan that I gained a more thorough understanding. Several times, Dharma Master Jinchuan met with me and spent time going over the details of Guanyin Bodhisattva's practice. So I'm really grateful for his kindness and his patience with me. Another course that I thought was very moving was Classical Chinese 1 and 2. So my Mandarin is quite terrible. So I wanted to take Chinese in order to improve my Mandarin speaking skills. So I was a little bit disappointed when I found out that we'd be learning mostly ancient ways of speaking. So I had the thought, well, kind of a stuck-up thought, and I thought, how is this going to even help me learn how to speak Mandarin? But later I developed a great appreciation for these two courses because the texts that were chosen were full of wisdom. They contained teachings that had to do with filial respect and honoring one's parents, and that really, really deeply moved me. And then finally, throughout our 4 semesters, we had to take Buddhist hermeneutics, and then Western hermeneutics for the first semester, and then Buddhist hermeneutics 1, 2, and 3 for the rest of the 3 semesters. And I remember taking a class on hermeneutics back when I was an undergraduate back in Calgary. And within the first week, I actually dropped out. I didn't really understand what hermeneutics meant, nor did I even care to want to know. But during our 4 semesters at DRBU, we had to take classes on hermeneutics. I think a challenging aspect of DRBU was trying to understand what this course was designed to teach or help us become aware of in ourselves. Because I'm someone who's very academically inclined, I continuously sought to look for doctrine, theses, logical mismatches contained within the text that we read. But even after all that analyzing, I still couldn't quite figure out what hermeneutics was all about. It wasn't until near the end of my time at DRBU and reflecting on what Dr. Verhoeven had taught us that I began to realize what this course was designed to teach us. From my perspective, the course was designed to show students how we approach and understand the world based on our conditionings and constructs. That is to say, how do we come to understand our own experiences based on what we've constructed for ourselves due to our language and our cultural conditionings? And how do we come to know ourselves and what practices are appropriate to guide us in our own practice or in our own process of self-cultivation? Do we copy what others do? Or do we come to an understanding that certain teachings and practices are suitable on one occasion, but may change over time? So in our last year of Buddhist hermeneutics, we read the scripture of the underlying meaning and the awakening of Mahayana faith. So from my understanding of these 2 texts, the world of experience is but a mere collection of mental events. Everything we come to know through our sense faculties and our physical body is interpreted and understood through the agency of the mind. The conditioning of our mind is what creates the world of things by which we formulate all of our judgments. So all of us weave together a different world. Even though we may share and occupy the same space, we understand and interpret our surroundings differently. For instance, me giving this talk, some of you may need English translations because English is not your first language, and others know English very well. So our conventions become the lens by which we create the world. And in creating the world, we discriminate right and wrong, good and bad, and so on. And it's through this very act of discrimination that we see self and others, subject and object. And from this follows all sorts of confusion and muddled thinking. The underlying meaning states that the mere fabrication of language shapes the very basis of our interpretive lens. For instance, The world as it's represented in my mind is affected by the language that I speak and the conventions by which I'm familiar with, by the culture I've been accustomed to, the family I grew up in, my experiences in childhood, the choices that I've made throughout my life, and my likes and dislikes. They're all woven together to form the way that my mind creates this world. Similarly, someone else's mind creates a different world, since no two people are exactly alike. And because of that, we each have a particular patterning based on our experiences and choices and influences of one's family, one's gender, and the various categories through which we mold and shape ourselves. They all weave together to create the world as we perceive it right now. So when we recognize this, we can shift our perspective in life. We can become more compassionate and forgiving and understand that others have their own conventions and cultural conditionings. We don't choose to become self-righteous in our views and presume that our reality is the correct one. We don't presume that there's only one right way of doing things and then force that view upon others. Why do I mention this? Well, it's because I'm like this. I'm very self-righteous in my views, and I like being correct. When I have found my definition of correctness, I try to persuade others to understand my truth-isms. However, I remember one time my classmate pointed this out to me. She kindly told me that I'm quite opinionated and very self-righteous and unaccepting of other way of seeing things. When I thought about what she had said, I thought, gosh, I am very self-righteous, especially when it comes to the Dharma. And then later, Dharma Master Jin Chuan said to me, when we establish rightness and wrongness, we create a lot of suffering for ourselves. There has to be a winner and a loser, and it's usually the one who wants to win that suffers the most. So when I heard this, I was deeply moved because I saw how quickly my mind moves to judgment when someone doesn't agree with me. So when we reflect upon our experiences in this way, we recognize that other people experience a different world. So there shouldn't be any presumption within me. And in doing so, we can live very harmoniously with others and accept others with kindness without being judgmental of them. And I think that this was one of the most beneficial things that I've learned in this course. So overall, I think that coming to DRBU was probably one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. I'm so grateful and thankful to all of my teachers and peers who helped make this journey joyous and full of learning. And I hope that those of you who are listening and are on the fence about coming to DRBU, you should just hop off the fence and make that leap towards, a wonderful learning opportunity. Your time as a student is limited, so enjoy the journey and have an open heart and mind. And I think DRBU will transform your life in a very positive way. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Danny, for sharing. And listening to Danny, it reminded me of a story that Marty told one time that someone asked Master Hua, says, well, what is it that the Buddha teach? And Shifu asked everyone in the room, what is it that the Buddha teach? And it turned out at the end, nobody got it right, but Shifu's answer was, well, actually the Buddha is teaching that all of us, every one of us have to change. That change is really at the heart of what the Buddha is teaching. And Doug Powers, who is also one of our senior teachers, often says that Master Hua would have all of his disciples do things, whether it's teaching or managing properties or translating or doing Dharma assemblies. They keep everyone busy, but at the heart of it is really giving everybody opportunity for us in whatever it is that we do. We use the opportunity to look into our mind and our own habits and our own conditionings and change our heart and mind. And hearing Danny's reflection and Danny's story, I really feel like he is an exemplar of what it is that we hope a DRBU student would ultimately learn, is not simply just knowledge from the text, but looking into each of our own heart and mind and learn about ourselves and be able to change in the deepest, most true way. So thank you, Danny, for that sharing. Next, I would like to invite Abigail. Abigail is our third speaker who is an MA graduate of tonight. So Abby.
Hello, everybody. So my name is Abigail Setera, and as some of you might know, I grew up here in CTTB, and I went to the girls' school when I was younger. So when I was growing up, I did not have a good impression of DRBU. So I thought, what was the use of getting a useless degree from a no-name school? And if you wanted to learn the real Buddhism, you need to do the hardcore work in CTTB rather than being pampered at DRBU, which won't get you anywhere. From a worldly perspective, getting any type of degree that won't lead you to a high salary is useless. And in actuality, cultivation comes in many shapes and forms, and the best way is whatever we have affinities with. So with regards to whether or not I have wasted my time coming to DRBU, well, this cannot be further from the truth. What I have learned at DRBU is truly invaluable, and I feel very fulfilled and transformed by my whole experience there. It really gave me the space to see the Dharma within my life. And once I was able to understand how my inner processes worked, I started to transform, and it became easier to let some of my bad habits go. And I hope that, like Danny said about coming to DRBU, and I hope that people will not make the same mistake I did looking down on this university. If I had not given it a chance, I would still be lost and stuck without the Dharma and without teachers to guide me. And I would still be entangled in my greed, anger, and ignorance, and never realizing how deep my habits go. Even though I have lived in CTTB for over 10 years, it was difficult for me to engage with the Dharma. And maybe it was because, I was still a child and it wasn't time for me yet. And I generally think that for children, it's difficult to appreciate the things that you are constantly surrounded by and you see every day. And it was more something that my parents did and the adults did, and I just did it because I was told to. Oftentimes it felt like I was on the edge and just peering in, and I wasn't sure if I was allowed to step across. I remember always being vaguely interested in Buddhism and wanting to read sutras, and I would stare at the bookshelves and full of Dharma books and sutras, but I would never touch them. And if I did, I would just flip through it, but it would be rare for me to actually sit down and take the time to read it. And when I attended ceremonies and Dharma sessions in the Buddha Hall, it was more out of obligation than actually wanting to go. And it was only the year before the pandemic that I started to enjoy going to Dharma sessions. I realized that what drew me in was the social aspect. It was the energy from everybody coming in together and seeing familiar faces in the Buddha Hall that really made me cherish these moments. So the highlight of DRBU for me was the social aspect. I came in during the pandemic, so maybe it's because I've been very isolated, and from that, and also since I've been helping out at the Tower of Blessings, taking care of the older Dharma masters, I haven't spoken to anyone my age in a while. Along with that, I think back in my first year of college after graduating the girls' school, it felt very alienating not to have a Buddhist friend around. Just having someone around who shares similar experiences makes it less lonely, even if we do not talk about the Dharma at all. Being able to come to DRBU was very fulfilling spiritually, emotionally, and mentally. My first and only semester in person, which was this past semester, was probably the best 4 months of my life. Being around like-minded people who are excited about and learning the Dharma, excited about learning and practicing the Dharma, gave me permission to dive in as well. I remember in class we read that the Buddha told Ananda that friendship is the whole of spiritual life, and I can attest to that 100%. When you know and feel that the people around you support you, you feel safe enough to be open about your own experiences, and you're also open to hearing about other people's experiences. And cultivation might be solitary, but that does not mean it has to be lonely. When I see the good qualities in my friends, I want to emulate them. I see how generous and kind they are, how they listen and how they speak. And I always see things I can improve on. In my first year, I was very reserved in class and preferred to listen to what others had to say. It was difficult to formulate my own thoughts. And when I did have thoughts, I often held myself back from sharing because I wasn't sure if it made sense or it didn't feel like the right time to jump in and other excuses. Fortunately, there was always someone in class who noticed that I had something to say and would say, Abigail has something to share. And knowing that someone wants to hear what I have to say and is willing to create a space where my thoughts are heard fills me with a lot of gratitude. I'm afraid of being vulnerable. And it's not just about being judged, but also the fact that if you share something that you're struggling with, it becomes more real and tangible. If I keep it in my thoughts, I won't have to struggle to face the reality of the problem. I can pretend that it's not there at all, even though I think about it all the time. At the end of my journey at DRBU, I realized that I'm not just a reserved and introverted person. I'm actually a very guarded and distrustful person. Not only do I not trust others, I do not trust myself. And to be quite honest, I still have a hard time with trust. At DRBU, it felt like I was given permission to let my walls down. Nobody forced me to. It was just a natural process that happened when I felt safe enough to be more open. And this is also due to seeing my cohort being open and vulnerable about their struggles and seeing how all of us came together to support each other. That trust comes from the kindness, compassion, and patience from knowing that we are all still people who are growing and imperfect. Being able to experience this spurs me on to be a better person, and it gives me a lot of joy to be surrounded by people like this. Of course, DRBU is not perfect and I don't get along with everybody all the time. And when afflictions arise, it gives me something to reflect on. And I have done a lot of reflection these past 2 years. I reflected a lot on my actions, my speech, and inner processes about who I am and who I want to be. I don't have all the answers now, but after reading the sutras and shastras and other texts, and discussing it in class, I now have a deeper Buddhist framework to help me reflect. And it could be said that through learning the Dharma, you unlearn everything you know. I think a lot of people see me as a happy girl who never gets angry and always listens to her parents and so on and so forth. In my first semester, there was someone in my cohort who said, Abigail never gets angry. Well, that annoyed me. I think I have a lot of anger in me, but I keep it buried in my heart. So maybe a better term for it is resentment. I even wrote about it in one of my papers, and it's been something that I've been working on since I, realized it last year. It weighs heavily on my heart, and I'm tired of carrying it around. After learning about the 8 consciousness, I realized that I don't want to carry these seeds of anger with me over and over in life after life. So I've been slowly healing, but the roots of my resentment are deep and it's not something that can disappear overnight. If I didn't go to DRBU, the conditions would not have come about for me to realize that I have this dormant resentment and that I needed to resolve it. If the conditions did somehow arise, I think it would be much later in life. And even then, I probably would not have the tools to make peace with it and let it go. So what are these tools? The method that I usually use is, the first thing to do is to listen to your body. And Danny talked about it earlier about Jing Chuanshi in class teaching us how to meditate with metta. And through these meditations, I realized that our body and mind are not as separate as we think it is. So for my anger and resentment, my heart usually feels clenched and heavy, and it's difficult to breathe. So from acknowledging how my body feels, I acknowledge that I feel hurt and upset. Because how can you let go of something if you cannot acknowledge that you're holding on to it? Then I ask myself, why do I feel this way? And I generally try to answer this without placing blame on the other person and focus on why this particular action or words hurt me. And this all happens in my head, so it's a bit difficult to describe, because sometime after that, I come to the realization that I don't want to feel this way anymore. And I also realize that I don't have to feel this way. And so I stop. So in a single thought, affliction is Bodhi. And for the first time, I understand what this statement means. And I remember the first time I read this line in the Platform Sutra, and that was back when I was in high school. So it took me about 7 years to understand it, at least partially. Acknowledging how you feel is just being patient with yourself and giving yourself loving kindness. This method doesn't work for everybody. It certainly doesn't work for me all the time. So the most important thing to do is to learn how to be kind and patient with yourself, which can be a very difficult thing to do. From being kind and patient with myself, extending that to others comes naturally, but I would not have known how to do that without my friends showing me their kindness and patience. We are all interconnected and we all interpenetrate each other. All the lessons I have learned at DRBU, I was actually taught all of these before, but it didn't mean much to me back then. And it's only now after these 2 years that it clicks and I see them with clarity. So yeah, thank you everybody for listening.
Thank you, Abigail. And Abigail mentioned one of the really core qualities I think defines DRBU community is the vulnerability. And I remember writing about it when I was when I was teaching at DRBU, that throughout my own graduate and undergraduate careers, a lot of times we have to pretend that we are smart, that we know what's going on, that we have our lives together, and that kind of is a mask that many of us have developed to either survive in the society, or that's just how we present ourselves. But coming to DRBU, actually the first thing that we have to learn is to let that go. And that's actually a quality that we all develop, what we all try to develop, which is vulnerability. Because as Abigail was saying, that actually to learn to be vulnerable is to see ourselves for who we are and accept ourselves for who we are. And only then can we start to change. And I think in a way, DRBU as a school is a very special place because it actually supports everyone, both instructors and students and staff, to be vulnerable and to look into ourselves at that place, rather than having to put on a mask and pretend to be someone that we are not. I was also reminded of a song when listening to Abigail, which is Master Hua wrote this song. The title is "I Am Really Lucky to Study Buddhism," and there's this line says, "I'm really lucky to study Buddhism because last life I planted good seeds, And now in this life, I have met good friends and a good knowing one to teach me deep wisdom. And I think it is true. Master Hua really kind of spoke, it really touched me that I feel really lucky, just like Abigail, that we have this community and that we have a group of friends, a good Dharma friends to practice together. So thank you, Abigail. Next, I would like to invite is Justin Lee. And Justin is a recent graduate from the translation of Buddha's text certificate program. Prior to that, actually, Justin was also a graduate from the MA program. But here, I think he is going to speak about his most recent experience. So Justin?
Yeah, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, everybody. So as what Stacy said, my name is Justin, and I graduated from the translation certificate program at DRBU this year, and then from the master's program in Buddhist classics back in 2020. So first off, I want to say that I am deeply indebted to the kindness and wisdom of my guiding teachers. So while you may only see my face here on the Zoom screen tonight, you're really gazing at all the people who sacrificed to shape me into who I am. So without further ado, I just want to start off by sharing a few reflections tonight from the translation certificate program. When I came into the translation program last fall, I presumed that the only thing we'd be doing was translating Buddhist texts. But as we got deeper and deeper into the work, I found out that there was so much more to translation than its literal meaning, and that there are many ways to quote unquote translate. For instance, one of my classmates enjoys running a farm. Another one of my classmates enjoys cooking and studying the I Ching. Another one of my classmates enjoys math and the vibrancy of culture. My other peers enjoy studying Sanskrit, playing basketball, rock climbing, making GIFs, and designing homemade calendars. As the weeks went on, I came to see that while these activities didn't fit my preconceived notions of translation, they were in fact the very expressions of it. After all, the word translate comes from the Latin components trans, meaning across, and latus, meaning carried. In essence, to translate means to carry across. We can carry across meaning with words, but this is not the only medium. When we are farming, we are carrying across meaning through planting and harvesting. When we are cooking, we are carrying across meaning through flavors. When we are playing basketball or rock climbing, we are carrying across meaning through physical movements. In a sense, these are all translations. For me, it seemed the boundaries between the literary work of translation and the lived day-to-day experience of translation became blurred. And I was left questioning, what exactly does it mean to translate? I don't know. And perhaps that is the answer. I don't know. In my eyes, it seemed everyone had become a translator. But I feel that these spheres of translation need not stop here. They can grow ever larger. When we interact with people from different academic disciplines, such as computer science, psychology, biochemistry, arts, athletics, and so forth, we are indeed also translating. When we interact with people from diverse cultural backgrounds or people with different life experiences from us, we are also translating. When nations interact with each other via policies and such, these are also translations. We are always translating in whatever we do, whether we know it or not. So this is my first observation that I came to see. However, how we translate is a far more pressing concern. And it is a concern not only for translators of scriptural texts, but a concern for all people on this planet. how we translate, how we convey meanings across the chasm of misunderstanding is an issue that humanity faces in the current era. With the crises befalling the world, such as the pandemic, the war between Russia and Ukraine, fleeing refugees in the millions, conflicts in the Middle East, and the myriads of other social ailments such as poverty, systemic racism, wealth inequality, consumerist culture, and the like, one may ask how this work of translation can be of any relevance at all. After all, we are just working with scriptures, right? At the International Institute for the Translation of Buddhist Texts, IITBT, we have a code of ethics called the 8 Guidelines. For those who are not familiar with the 8 Guidelines, you may visit their website to read about them. It dawned on my attention that these principles are not simply Buddhist principles, rather they are human principles. They were laid down because we are human and must be human. They exist because they wish to point to our fundamental nature that is universally accessible to everyone. It does not matter if you're a Buddhist, Christian, Muslim, atheist, African American, Asian, Caucasian, Hispanic, and so forth. These principles exist because they wish to align our hearts and minds to our deeper humanity, one that is based on common values such as ethics, respect, wisdom, friendliness, and stillness, to only name a few. Of the 8 guidelines, the one I most reflected upon over the past year was the 4th guideline, which says, quote, translators and volunteers must not establish themselves as the standard of correctness and suppress the work of others with their fault finding, unquote. In the Avatamsaka Sutra, a text that we worked with in the past year, it says that people who wish to walk the Bodhisattva path aspire to directly know and perceive with utterly clear cognition all worlds in all their vastness and countless varieties. By this definition, a bodhisattva, one of the highest expressions of our human potential, is any person who wishes to awaken others and themselves to their full potential. When I read this passage in juxtaposition with the 4th principle, it unlocked deeper meanings. At its heart, both a translator and a bodhisattva aspire to know all worlds and their countless varieties. Both aspire to save through the conveyances of meaning. Based on this line of the Avatamsaka Sutra, the goal of a translator then is not to seek for an ultimate truth, but rather to embrace an infinite variety of truths that can all exist simultaneously. This is what it means to directly know and perceive with utterly clear cognition all worlds. We all have our own worlds, with their own set of truths and their own set of realities. Wisdom, then, it seems, is not so much about choosing to be right, but about choosing to understand the multiplicity of perspectives, of truths, and of worlds. It does not strive for all things to be the same. It allows for the multiplicity of experiences and traditions to exist, rooted in an understanding of a common humanity. It acknowledges differences rather than fears it. This integral spirit of understanding will perhaps be one of the most pressing concerns of our time, and will likely dictate the course of our humanity. In the deepest sense, the 4th principle teaches us that no tradition, faith, person, or association can assume themselves as a standard of correctness for the way things ought to be. That is the quickest way to start a conflict, and is evident in the violence that we see today. Everyone wants to be right. Few people wish to understand. Said more directly, this means that within our Buddhist tradition, Mahayana practitioners should not look down upon Theravada practitioners. And likewise, it means that Theravada practitioners should not look down on Mahayana practitioners. It means that Chan practitioners should not look down on Pure Land practitioners, and that Pure Land practitioners should not look down upon Chan practitioners. The same is true for the other schools. It means that Buddhists should not look down upon Christians as a deviant faith, as a Wai Dao, and that Christians should not look down upon Buddhists as people who worship demons. The same is true for other religions. It means that we do not look down upon others because of race. It means that we do not look down upon others because of social status. It means that we do not look down upon others because of how much power we have, in other ways we contrive to make ourselves separate from one another. We are all human. We all came from a mother and a father. We are all born from the earth and waters of this planet and must return to them when we die. Why then, for all the striving and conflict and denigration and outcasting and exploiting of our very own brothers and sisters? We may look different, but are we really any different? If there is to be any hope for humanity, it will be found in our capacity to love and understand one another. It will be found in our capacity to translate across the divides, from heart to heart, group to group, species to species, living to non-living. Most, if not all, social ailments come from our incapacity to understand one another. We kill one another because of it. We blow each other up because of it. We cast people into the shadows because of it. We deprive people of their humanity. We silence people. We blame and point fingers because of it. It takes courage to conquer others, but it takes even greater courage to conquer ourselves. Can we have the courage to lay down arms, whatever they may be, and try to understand? Can we see our common humanity beneath all of our so-called labels that we take for real? If we wish to live our lives meaningfully, we need to set aside our notions about each other, look past all the names, all the labels, and even our painful histories and mistakes, and try to understand one another. Only then can we truly be considered humans. Only then can we truly be considered translators. We may not be perfect at first, but at least we try, and that is enough. These are my reflections for tonight. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Justin, for that extremely thoughtful reflection on the meaning of translating and what it means to translate. And I especially I wrote down this, what Justin said was, wisdom is not seeking for one truth, but it's actually seeking to understand. And how the ability that Justin was able to connect just the meaning of translation to our world and all the social issues that we're facing as a society really shows me the importance of education, and how Master Hua used to say that education is the best national defense. In a way, education is the best force for social change. And I really hope that, Justin, you can help bring the ideas that you kind of realize at DRBU, and that you can bring it out into the world. And in a way, Master Hua's school, DRBU, can act as a force of social change. So thank you, Justin, for that very thoughtful reflection. I think our final speaker tonight is Dharma Master Jing Shang. Dharma Master Jing Shang will be speaking as a graduate of the Buddhist text translation graduate certificate program.
Hello, everyone. I was called to speak as a backup today, so I don't have any notes, but I have some points that I can expand on. Like Justin, when I first entered the program, I had one-dimensional view of translation, and so that is to just translate and benefit other people. But as I get into the semester, 2 semesters, there are a lot to learn from, and like other speakers, basically is working on yourself. And there's a course called Translating the Dharma, theories, ethics, and skills. So there's the dimension of ethics, which is also described in the 8 guidelines of BTTS. And so the first 4 guidelines are all talking about working on self. So not being arrogant, not being self-righteous, and so on. And so the 4th, I think the 6th one, I'd like to expand a little bit. Actually, the number 5, it says, a translator must take the Buddha mind as his or her own mind. So how do we take the Buddha mind if we haven't enlightened yet? We are not enlightened yet. So, but working in a team, we get to hear each other's point of views, and we get to be team players, and that is when we get to that collective awareness and consciousness, and we learn from each other, and we learn to see others' point of view and also cultures that they come from. And so even though we are not enlightened yet, we also work on ourselves. In this class, translating the Dharma, we had a chance to meditate 4 days a week, and we get to self-reflect and take some notes on our own afflictions, and even we learn to do our own guided meditation on the 4 unlimited minds, like compassion, kindness, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. So by learning to give guided meditations ourselves, we learned to explore these different aspects of the mind. And also during the program, in the program, I learned some memorization as part of the student symposium, and that was really wonderful to be able to practice that. And since I'm not very good in memorizing things, I've been forgetful a lot. So yeah, so that's, I think we don't have much time really. I just want to say it was great to be able to learn from each other and see from different perspectives. And I will continue to work on myself. And also during the summer, we are continue to work on the translation of Aristotle Sutra.
Amitabha. I also want to let everyone know that at DRBU, many of us, we wear many hats, and Dharma Master Jing Shang is also part of our registrar's office and help us keep all of the university records, academic records for the past many, many years. And also Jing Shang should also in the past have taught Sanskrit at DRBU, and Jing Shang is also a Sanskritist. And now I think we can open for questions after this. And if there's 5 speakers, the question can be addressed to any of the speakers. So the audience, if you have any questions, please feel free to put it in the chat. And to give people, maybe we'll give people time for the questions to come in. We do have a slideshow that I can share for a few minutes. At the end of, at every commencement ceremony, our resident photographer, Stan Shabda, would put together a slideshow every year. And this year's slideshow can be found on YouTube. And I'll put the link here in the chat. And here, maybe I can just show the first 5 minutes. And in the slideshow, you will see a lot of the faces and kind of the life at DRBU outside of the classroom. When I was looking back, a lot of it are student activities and some of the extracurriculum activities, but it will give everyone a sense of the people and the life at DRBU. So maybe I can share that for 5 minutes. And if the audience, you have any questions for our speakers today, please feel free to type them in the chat. I will, okay. Oops. Let's see. So if people have questions for our speakers tonight, please feel free to put it in chat. Otherwise, I guess we're ready to end. There's no one want to ask any questions?
Maybe Nguyen can announce next Sunday's talk, then people can still ask questions.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Amitofo, next Sunday we will have Terry Nicholson, is also disciple Guo Chen is her Dharma name, and her topic will be harmony in the community of the four assemblies. So she was the founding principal of our Instilling Goodness elementary school at the City of 10,000 Buddhas, and so she will share some experience and with Venerable Master and his teachings, I believe. Yes.
And you will get married if there are no questions. Can you lead?
Oh, okay. Before that, I just want to also announce that for people who are interested, we will be holding the summer seminar on reading and translating Buddhist texts from July 29th to August 4th. And it will be in person again, but there will also be an option for attending online for those who cannot make it in person. Okay, so everyone palms together, and thank you to everyone's to tonight's speakers for their wonderful talks.
How do people find out that seminar?
Oh, okay. I can put the link in the chat box. Hold on. Yeah, Yifa, do you want to add any more details about the summer seminar, like what languages are involved, or can you unmute Yifa?
I have to make a co-host.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
This year we have English. We have English team, French team, Spanish team, Pali team, Korean team. 5 teams so far.
Yeah. If any other people want to volunteer other languages, it's also possible.
Yeah, welcome. And then we actually encourage people to attend in person. Only a couple of key translators who are outside of this country, they are permitted to attend the translation seminar online.
Okay.
How does it work? You have so many teams.
Pardon me? Could you please repeat your question?
How is that going to work? You got so many teams going on. I think you can probably explain a little bit more for people.
Yin-Fa, would you like to explain the process?
Yeah. Basically, all the teams will be working at the same time. So it's very exciting and very energetic. And they will be working on different parts or of the same text, perhaps, or sometimes there will be often a Chinese to English team in which there's also a part of the team is English to a third language working together. So there's like communication while the people are discussing the text in Chinese and then translating it into English. And meanwhile, a third language is also working on it, and they can also have the chance to question the meaning in Chinese, which is beneficial. Yeah. So
I
it's.
think we can dedicate married.
Okay.
You can dedicate married.
Okay. So everyone, please put your palms together. And I think in addition to what we're going to chant, we can also dedicate the merit to all those who are affected by war, or may they be fearless and have the courage to go on. May the merit from this practice adorn all the Buddha's lands, repay the kindness from above, and rescue those in paths below. May all who see or hear of this resolve upon awakening. And when this body meets and be born together in the land of bliss. 3 bows. Bow in respect to the Venerable Master. 3 more bows. Amitofo.
Amitofo. Thank you, everyone, all the wonderful speakers, and also Stacy's adoration, and thank everyone's participation. Amitofo.
And thank you for the translators too.
Let's try. See you, Juan.